important that we made a showing. And I know that in places like Sleaford, where the press response initially was, "Who? What are you doing here?" Actually, they took our campaign, and Ross's campaign in particular, very, very seriously. So thank you for helping, and we hope at some point the by-elections will calm down. After Manchester Gorton, of course. And again, thank you for those who've already been to Manchester Gorton. If you were at the rally last night, you will have heard how important that is. Jackie Piercy is an old friend of mine. I've known her for 2 decades. We became approved candidates together. We've stood in elections in the 90s and the 2000s. She is an outstanding and experienced candidate, and she was a councillor in Manchester Gorton for over 2 decades. There isn't a person more qualified to fight that particular seat. So we wish her well. I did also want to briefly mention future by-elections. I mean, we know about, we guess there might be some coming, but we're never quite sure. But I think the news this last week of the Conservative Party being fined £70,000 and over a dozen police forces having referred cases to the Crown Prosecution Service means that we might end up on war footing much sooner than we thought, whether it's for a mini general election with half a dozen by-elections all at the same time, which would be something quite extraordinary, or perhaps Theresa May actually listens to us and decides that she does need to get a mandate herself for what she's trying to do with hard Brexit. So I'm not saying that we're on war footing now. What I am saying is we're living in an environment that we've never, ever seen before. Politics as we knew it has been thrown out of the window. So for those of you who've been members for some time, as I have, watch this space. For new members, I suspect you think we live on a diet of by-elections the entire time. Let's hope that's not the case. Although if it results in wins, I'll be very pleased about that. I also want to talk about the surge in membership, and thank you if you have joined us in the last 18 months, nearly 2 years, in the run-up to the general election or afterwards. I think I've said at conference before that the thing that used to keep me awake at night was the 1-year retention. Well, last year, I am incredibly proud to tell you that we had 85% retention of the members who joined us after the general election. That is unheard of across any political party. So thank you for all those of you who've renewed. But you know what I'm going to say next, don't you? We've had another surge since. So this year, this summer, this autumn, we will need to do the same. And we absolutely need to make sure that our new members feel welcomed, not just with all the emails and the requests for money and other things that we send out from HQ, but with what you're doing in your local parties. And conference is a key part of that. Make sure you report back on the decisions that we're making. Tell the people who aren't here, those I hope who are watching as it's live streamed, exactly what we're doing. Because as I said last night at the first timers reception, it is absolutely vital that this party continues to make its policy through the voice of the members, through you submitting motions, debating motions, speaking in motions, and voting on motions, which then becomes our party policy. That's what gives us, parliamentarians, the real strength. We're able to stand up in the House of Commons and in the House of Lords and know that we are speaking on your behalf. I know we've got some tricky debates coming today, but I tell you what, that's what I love about conference. I really enjoy people in a friendly, respectful way of other views, with passion, debating about what goes on. It's a dying art. And we do not, as the SNP, as Labour and the Conservatives do, completely stage manage their conferences. We're very clear that this conference is your conference. It's not run entirely for the media. So, in conclusion, Spring Conference is always far, far too short. In just over 24 hours, we'll be closing the ceremonies here. Live it to the full. You're going to be making some key decisions. You're going to have the chance with some wonderful fringes. And I know that you'll also be having lots of networking with friends and colleagues. But most of all, show that this is a truly democratic party that makes its policy through its members. Thank you very much. I declare this conference open.
Good morning, conference. I know this is the bit you've been rushing into to see. We're going to move to the reports of the Federal Conference Committee and of the Federal Policy Committee. So without more ado, I'm going to ask Andrew Wiseman, please, to move the report of the Federal Conference Committee. You have the reports in a separate booklet that I'm sure you've read already, and Andrew will be speaking to that report.
Thank you, James. Thank you, Chair. And may I also please extend my warm welcome to everybody to this spring conference in York. I'm sure it's going to be a fascinating conference, and as we've heard from Sal as President, there are some really interesting debates, and there's a lot going on. We've crammed a lot in to the very full programme, and I'm sure you will all find time not just to be in the auditorium, but to visit the various party bodies and outside organisations are exhibiting all around the building, both at the back here, but also in the front foyer. Since our last conference, we've had elections to the federal committees, and on the conference committee, which I'm very proud to have been re-elected chair of, I'd like to welcome the new members of the committee, but I would also like to say goodbye and thank you to a few members who either stood down or did not get re-elected. I know you should never pick people out, but I'm going to do that. I particularly want to highlight three very long-standing members of the committee who are no longer members of the committee. They either stood down or didn't get re-elected, and that's Gareth Epps, Justine McGuinness and John Ball. Their hard work, experience and dedication to the conference committee will be sorely missed, and I'm sure you would all like to thank them for all the hard work they've put in over the years. One of the things we often get asked is what's happening in relation to future venues and where are we going and why don't we go to a particular venue in a particular city. Well, we're shortly going to be announcing where we're going to next spring. Hope to do that in the next couple of months. And we're very pleased to be going back to Bournemouth, and we have formally announced that, going back to Bournemouth next autumn. But venues are always very difficult to source, and there's lots of competing interests. And it's not just a matter of choosing a city and going to a venue. They have to fit, they have to work, they have to be affordable. And the conference committee will be receiving a full report on lots of different potential venues, why we can go to some, why we can't go to others at a future meeting, and we will report back on that. We use our Facebook group, the Liberal Democrat Federal Conference Facebook group, a lot, and if you're not a member of that, I do urge you to join. If you are on Facebook, it is a good way of us disseminating information quickly and easily to lots of people. My final thing I'd like to highlight are my thanks to the conference office staff. We have a very small conference office. They're very dedicated, they're incredibly hard-working, and for this conference, 3 out of 4 of them are new to Liberal Democrat Conference. So I would really like to thank them for all the hard work, but also the fabulous job they have put on, considering that we've had a 75% turnover in staff, either because of people leaving or maternity leave, and to have that sort of turnover for people new to a conference to come to this venue and put on such a well-organised conference, I think really shows how professional they are, and I would like to thank them all for their very hard work and their dedication in putting conference on. So thank you, staff. That's it. I'm more than happy to answer any questions, but I'm obviously pleased to see there weren't any. Yep, that's not an invitation for next time. So if I can formally move the conference committee report. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. I thought you were going to take questions from the floor. So, as Andrew reminded you, you did not submit any questions in advance, so we're now going to move to a straight vote. Can I see those in favour of receiving the report of the Federal Conference Committee? Please show. Thank you. And those who do not wish to receive it? I see no votes at all. That's clearly received and carried. Thank you very much. We'll now move to the report of the Federal Policy Committee, and Baroness Ludford, as Vice Chair of the FPC, is going to move that report. There are also there are a couple of questions at the end of this, which you will find in your daily announcement sheet. So yeah, we'll move on to those after Sarah's moved the report. Sarah.
Thank you very much, James, and good morning, conference. Good morning, happy campers. It's a good job the party believes in recycling and renewables, because I find myself once again a vice chair along with Duncan Brack and Jeremy Hargreaves of the FPC, not much short of a quarter of a century before I first did the job. So it's interesting to find myself renewed. The Federal Policy Committee is, of course, what it says on the tin. We do policy. And we have the honour of being chaired by the leader. This is the first report since the committee's election under one member, one vote. So that's the responsibility of all of you. And we've had a number of very good new faces onto the committee, including some who've only joined since 2015 election. So it's a very good team. You can see in the report the schedule of consultation and policy papers. We have 2 new policy working groups that are from among the priority topics that were identified by the so-called Agenda 2020 process. And they are Immigration and Identity, chaired by Adam Pritchard, and Power to People and Communities. And I can add to what's in the report that Tim Pixton of ALDC has been appointed as chair of that. So they'll produce consultation papers for the autumn conference with policy papers for next spring. Just want to stress the section on member engagement in the report. The FPC is reviewing the processes of member engagement to widen and deepen members' involvement in policy development. Although we have done work since the general election to improve that, there is more to be done. And alongside the consultation papers for sex work and nuclear weapons, we ran online surveys which each received over 1,000 responses. We've been advertising for membership of policy working groups more actively. We're getting in the region of 130 applications per working group, which gives a great choice and breadth of expertise with greater diversity as well. But we know there's still more to do. Improving the accessibility of policy on the website, producing pocket guides to policy and so on, are all on the agenda. We've also, finally, I would highlight the appointment of representatives to the regional parties of England. So if you don't know who your regional rep is, hopefully they will have been appointed by now. I think the process is still in completion. But if you don't know who your regional rep is, it's a good idea if local parties can make sure they know and that liaison is made. So I'll leave it there and welcome questions.
Thank you, Sarah. There are 2 questions that are on the order paper. The first is from Malcolm Mitchell and relates to the timescales and requirements on for consultation and input. So if you'd like to answer that question, that's on the order paper, question 1.
Yes, Malcolm is unhappy about the period for responses to consultation papers. But I would gently say that it's not just 12 days. It's really 6 weeks to respond to a consultation paper. These were available on the website from 20th of April. It may have been a couple more days after that the email went out drawing attention to the consultation papers, and a little bit later than that hard copies for those who signed up to them were received through the post. But with a deadline of 31st of March, that did give 6 weeks, or at least 4 or 5 weeks, for response. So it's not, you don't sort of wait to arrive at conference before you get the consultation paper. So it's not, I would say it's not 12 days. It's up to 6 weeks. And as the working groups have to write their papers and have them approved by the FPC by late June, there just isn't much time to spare after conference. So if you slipped it beyond the 31st of March, and I'm not saying there isn't a teeny bit of wiggle room if people slip in their responses at the very beginning of April, but you know, you just wouldn't have time for the whole process of production of the policy paper to work. Also, these schedules, as in the report here, you can see the schedules ahead. You know that those 2 consultation papers I highlighted are coming up in autumn, so you could start your planning for how your local party is going to deal with the consultations on those 2, immigration identity, power to people and communities. So I think that I would gently say that we feel there is a decent time, but as I mentioned, we are looking at everything, so we will take that feedback into account and see if there's anything more we can do. It was mentioned to me that the packs, the Peaks and Politic packs, went out a little late, so we will give membership department a little bit of a nudge on that. But it all helps. So thanks for the question, because it does help make us reflect, and I hope you're not too unhappy with the answer.
And if you are, Malcolm, you have an opportunity for a supplemental. Even if you're not, you still have the opportunity for a supplementary question to follow up. I can't see you, so I don't know if you're here. If you do have a supplementary... do you have a supplementary question? You don't. Thank you very much. I should say to our next questioner is Jonathan Brown. Jonathan, if you have a supplementary question, they will be taken from the intervention mic, which is over in that corner but behind Sarah, so I can't actually see you. So if you want to move there, if you have a supplemental, that would be good. So the second question, Sarah, is from Jonathan Brown relating to the establishment of a BME manifesto and plans for that.
Yes, the question used the term manifesto. I think we thought, without being presumptuous, that this was really more focused on the idea of a policy paper. And if I'm wrong, Jonathan will no doubt take me out, because obviously we have done a BME manifesto before, but that it wouldn't be yet. You know, that would be a distillation of aspects of the General Election Manifesto. So we're taking this to mean a policy paper. And I can tell you that the FPC is going to make decisions at its first meeting after conference, which is by the end of March, on what policy working groups to commission for autumn 2018. And one of the suggestions that we already have highlighted that we're going to be looking at is one on BME or BMAME issues. I can't prejudge the decision that the FPC will take, but it is very definitely on our radar.
Thank you, Sarah. Jonathan, do you have a supplementary? I don't see you or anybody at the mic, so I'm presuming, therefore, there isn't one. So then we can move to a vote on the FPC report, as Sarah has moved it. Can I please see those people in favour of receiving the report of the FPC? Thank you very much. And can I see anybody wishing to vote against that? Again, I see none. That is clearly carried and received. Thank you very much to Sarah and to Andrew. Thank you all, everybody, and thanks to my aides, Mary Reid and Cara Jenkinson in the hall. Thank you very much, conference.
on page 37 of your agendas, and there is also a policy paper that goes with it, which some of you will have, but is also available on the party's website. There is one amendment which you will find on page 10 of Conference Daily. One request for a separate vote was received, but it was decided not to take it. I shall quickly explain the procedure for the benefit of new members, as it is our first policy debate of conference. We will have a series of speeches starting with the proposer of the motion, then the proposer of the amendment. During those speeches, we will be taking interventions at around 10 a.m, which are a series of short 1-minute speeches from the microphone to your left over there. If you wish to speak in the intervention, or indeed if you wish to speak in the main debate, there is still time to put a card in. Cards can be obtained from the speaker's desk on your right, where they should also be returned to. At the end, after the summing up, we will have two votes. First of all, we will vote whether to accept the amendment or not, and then we will vote on the motion as a whole, as amended if it was amended previously. I will explain that again at the end. As this is a policy motion, it is a simple majority of those present required in order to pass it. So we now move on to our proposers. Could I ask Simon McGrath to stand by, please? And I now call Dr. Belinda Brooks-Gordon from South Cambridgeshire, who was chair of the Policy Working Group, to move the motion. Belinda.
Friends, I thank you. I thank you because this policy motion came from you. It came from a grassroots motion here on the floor of the conference 3 years ago. You asked us, the Policy Working Group, to take evidence and to produce policy fit for an open, tolerant party to protect those working in a modern, evolving economy. And commercial sexual activity is an unusual economy. We found that there's a wide span of activity that covers sex work, from phone line operators and webcam broadcasters to pole dancers and producers of pornography, and from strip clubs and sexual entertainment venues to escort services and dominatrix work. We found a diverse range of people engaging in transactional sex, from cisgender women and men having sex with men to transgender people at various stages of their transition, sometimes saving up for operations. We found that access to the internet and the prevalence of mobile phones means that work has changed beyond recognition in 15 years. Street work, never more than 5 to 8% of sex work, has reduced significantly. Now we see a range of tech-savvy workers who promote their services on multiple web platforms. And we found often people engage in sex work to supplement other income, to save for a deposit on a flat, to pay off debts, or to put themselves through a course to change career, or when working in the gig economy with all its latent uncertainties. But there was a common link between them, and that was that any amount of criminalisation, no matter how slight, gives authoritarians the excuse to harass women, men, and transgender workers. Criminalisation means that ASBOs on a record or prosecutions for loitering or soliciting make it impossible to get work afterwards. The stigma and the barrier of a criminal record mean that what starts as a short-term option can, with current laws, end up being impossible to move out of. When we criminalise, we stigmatise, and we fail to give people a chance to do something else. Paradoxically, the current laws entrench a lifestyle they aim to change. Stigma means it's harder to report a crime for fear of being known to the police, or fear of not being believed, or not being listened to as a credible witness. Stigma means it's harder to get a bank account, or borrow money, or move through society without the finger being pointed. And that's why we want the decriminalisation of adults working together for mutual protection. And that's why we want the decriminalisation of workers and their clients, so that consenting adults are not harassed when involved in private activity. We want past convictions for loitering, soliciting, brothel keeping or curb crawling to be quashed, so that people can move on with their lives and not be the target of blackmailers because they happened to do some work a few years ago in their past to pay off a debt, or had an indiscretion as they tumbled out of a nightclub after a stag do. We found we have to have safety mainstreamed and additional support for people